The chair recognizes the honorable member for Seabreeze.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful for this opportunity this evening to rise and speak in this House on behalf of the good people of Seabreeze in this year of our Lord 2018 during this year's budget debate. It's the people's budget, Mr. Speaker, and we are here to continue to press on for the people of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, Barack Obama was the first African-American president. As the 44th President of the United States, at the time of his election, the country was suffering from the effects of the global financial crisis. It was considered by economists as the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. Mr. Speaker, we must get the facts straight from the offset. 1, from we came into office and found what we found all year, the Deputy Prime Minister, good member for East Grand Bahama, would have signaled to us that we would have to take urgent austerity measures. 2, but for the actions of the former administration in what I term its mismanagement of the people's financial affairs, we would not be in the position we are in today. That's right. 3, our current financial situation is stable but not critical. This means if we act now, we can stop the country from going into cardiac arrest. Our debt to GDP ratio dictates that we have some wiggle room, Mr. Speaker, but we must better manage our resources and put the country on the right trajectory. Under the last administration, we were headed in the wrong direction. 4, the opposition has only 10% of political capital. They won 4 out of the 39 seats. This means the people really have no confidence in any utterance they make in here or anywhere at this time. On the other hand, Mr. Speaker, with an average of 90% political capital, or 35 out of 39 seats, and a trend of the electorate changing administration every 5 years, the government knows if we do not right the wrongs of the former government, we have everything to lose and nothing to gain. 5, truth is 7.5% in the midst of poor management could not and did not take us under, Mr. Speaker. In the hands of prudent leaders, I dare say, another 4.5% certainly will not harm us. 6, Mr. Speaker, if we knew then what we know now, we might have said and done some things differently. But because there was inadequate levels of transparency and accountability, we had to sit small until our names were called. 7, Mr. Speaker, our names have been called. Pine Ridge, North Abaco, Yamacraw, Bain and Grantstown, North Andros, Southern Shores, Nassau Village, Mount Moriah, Golden Isles, Elizabeth, South Beach. The roll has been called and our service will be weighed in the balance. We are duty-bound to rise to the occasion. Mr. Speaker, without vision, the people would perish. Now that we know our challenges, we now know. We know how to pray and we know how to maneuver. Failure for this administration, Mr. Speaker, is not an option. Today we present our vision to provide for the people of the Bahamas plans for a balanced budget. And for this vision, I commend the Honorable Member for Kalani and the Honorable Member for East Grand Bahama, and I commend this Free National Movement administration. Mr. Speaker, it's the people's time. It's the people's time to balance the budget. And as leaders, it is our fiscal responsibility to make policy decisions rather than take political positions that will not serve to help our country or our people. Mr. Speaker, this government is securing for the people of the Bahamas a secure and a prosperous future. Mr. Speaker, returning briefly to the inspiring story of former President Obama, I dare say that though entering leadership at a rough time economically, that administration, having accomplished successes to the people's satisfaction, the American people voted for President Obama to serve a second term. Not because things were the best at that time, but because they felt he was a leader that they could trust to make the tough decisions and would work to the ultimate benefit of the American people. Mr. Speaker, fact is, with that and any new president or leader, things were and will be done differently. And under that administration, unemployment declined, job growth was spurred, and the economy began to rebound. And today, under their new president, President Donald Trump, the Bahamas is pleased that that upward trend is continuing. Mr. Speaker, Obama did the best he could for the people, but the people had to roll up their sleeves and work with him to make it happen. Today, America, I am advised, is financially stronger. Mr. Speaker, the reality is the former administration, in my view, continued to have too many teachable moments and not much learning outcomes. They continue to take political positions rather than make policy decisions. And today, though they have a mere 10% political capital, it does not appear that they have recognized the error of their ways. Mr. Speaker, Mark 2, verse 22 says, and I quote, "No man putteth new wine into old bottles, and the wine is spilled, and the bottles will be marred. But new wine must be put into new bottles." Mr. Speaker, this government needs a fresh start and a fair chance. If you gave those other folk a chance with 7.5%, surely you can give a tried and proven government an opportunity with 4.5%. Mr. Speaker, it is this government's considered position that a small increase of 4.5% will ensure that over the next 3 years we are able to accomplish the vision of balancing the budget. Mr. Speaker, we know we cannot swear or promise that everything will go exactly as planned. We do not hold tomorrow. Sometimes we have unexpected events, and sometimes the vicissitudes of life vary. But this we do know, that we have a God who holds our hands. Therefore, I say, Mr. Speaker, all things remaining equal, that is, no major change in circumstance, no major factor that would cause an economic crisis, we will do what we say we will do. Mr. Speaker, it is the people's time to balance the budget, and we must make policy decisions rather than take political positions. I say to the opposition through you, Mr. Speaker, a word to the wise is sufficient. Mr. Speaker, I can vividly recall the words of the Right Honorable Hubert Ingram, who said during the 2007 elections, "Can you imagine what would happen if you let them put their hands in the cookie jar?" Mr. Speaker, allow me to roll back the curtain of chronology, if you will. On the 2nd of May 2007, the Bahamian people listened to the words of warning. We secured the crumbs left in the cookie jar from 2002. We returned a free national movement government to power. Mr. Speaker, but one George Santano said this, and I quote, "Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it." Hence, Mr. Speaker, history records that on May 7th, 2012, the people made a shift in government, notwithstanding the previous warning, and they voted in the Progressive Liberal Party. Mr. Speaker, to my mind, that was a material mistake. And for that mistake, Mr. Speaker, we all today must take responsibility. Tyrone Edwards said, right actions in the future are the best apologies for bad actions in the past. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamian people hired this government because we know it's time to make wrong things right and it's time to make crooked parts straight. It's the people's time to balance the budget. And now is the time to begin to refill the cookie jar. Mr. Speaker, there are consequences for mistakes, albeit innocent or by deceit or misunderstanding. And though it was originally considered by the former government that they impose as high as 15% in value-added tax, this people's government has made a policy decision that, notwithstanding the result of what appeared to be wastage and mismanagement of funds, we will make do with an additional 4.5%, not an additional 7.5%, Mr. Speaker, as was proposed. We said 4.5. Mr. Speaker, it is my firm belief that had those on the other side been on this side today, that VAT would have been hiked not this year, but from last year to 15%. But thank God for his intervention and for the wisdom and obedience of the Bahamian people. Mr. Speaker, no games, no scams. Mr. Speaker, the plain truth is there is a cost to that material mistake in 2012. And we must commit to never, ever making that mistake again of hiring people who have not demonstrated that they have confessed their sins and repented of their ways. It is not too late, Mr. Speaker, to say sorry. Mr. Speaker, the only thing I am still waiting to hear from the other side is sorry. And until then, my opinion, and perhaps the opinion of the general public with regard to the Progressive Liberal Party, is unlikely to change. Mr. Speaker, as a nation, we must rally together, rally behind our leader in whom we have reposed confidence, and we must balance the budget. But first things first, we need to begin to refill the cookie jar. Mr. Speaker, we all have to ride out the storm. Truth is, we are not able to get all hanky-dory as yet. We must ride out the storm. Mr. Speaker, completing my chronological account, on the 10th of May 2017, the people restored their trust and confidence in a free national movement government. The Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance would have lamented over and repeatedly that he found the cupboard virtually empty. In reality, Mr. Speaker, because we are a visual society, kindly allow me to present a snapshot of the evidence we found on day one. Want to check it? Nothing. Mr. Speaker, concluding the story of that same former President Obama, he said, and I quote, if the people cannot trust their government to do the job for which it exists, to protect them and to promote their common welfare, all else is lost. Mr. Speaker, this is what we found on day one. And Mr. Speaker, if the Bahamian people had not acted wisely on May 10th, 2017 of last year, I would venture to say that even this cookie jar
might have been missing.
Might not be found.
The cookie jar had IOUs in it.
Mr. Speaker, this is what we found. We only have left the value of the cookie jar. But no cookies, Mr. Speaker, no cookies. You tell me how are we going or how are we going to eat with no cookies in the jar? All they had were empty jars and empty promises. And Mr. Speaker, we still have to ask the million-dollar question that we will always ask the government who implemented VAT effective the 1st of July 2015. Mr. Speaker, we push them, we tell them no 15. We can't do 15, Mr. Speaker, but they really wanted that 15. But I thank God he is able to intervene. But the question the million-dollar question still stands. Where the bad money gone? Mr. Speaker, we have to believe in our government. We have to believe in our Prime Minister. And Mr. Speaker, it cannot be old story because we're still feeling the effects from it today. Mr. Speaker, that's why we are in the position we're in. But for the actions of the former administration, we would not have been in the position we're in today. Mr. Speaker, we have to believe in our government. We have to believe in our Prime Minister. We have to believe in the change that we have prayed, we have campaigned for, and we have voted for. Mr. Speaker, we can't go back on our word. We are with the Free National Movement. The Progressive Liberal Party government was not working for us. Mr. Speaker, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. It comes by hearing, and hearing the word of God. Mr. Speaker, it's time for the people to balance the budget, but we have to begin to refill the cookie jar. Mr. Speaker, June of every year is the government's time to make the tough decisions, and based on the reality before it. Seabreeze realized on May 10, 2017, it was time for a change. And today I believe they are even more resolute in that decision. Let me say from the offset that Seabreeze stands behind this government's decision to give the people the opportunity to balance the budget. But to do this, we have to put a little extra in the cookie jar. Mr. Speaker, when it is all said and done, and I believe it will not be said that the MP for Killarney on his own balanced the budget, or the MP for East Grand Bahama balanced the budget, or neither will it be said that the MP for Seabreeze or Elizabeth or South Beach balanced the budget. It will be said that the people of the Bahamas came together, made the sacrifices, and together they balanced their budget. Mr. Speaker, I believe we may have some good F&Ms in the audience, but it even wouldn't be said that the F&M balanced the budget. The annals of history will say the people of the Bahamas balanced the budget. Mr. Speaker, the annals of history must reflect this. Based on the challenge, and together it must say that we rebounded our economy. We boosted economic activity, and we secured for our children and grandchildren and generations to come a safe and secure future. Good leaders don't only think of today, Mr. Speaker. Good leaders don't only cry about today, Mr. Speaker. Good leaders make tough decisions for tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, we have made a decision rather than take a policy decision rather than take a political position. We will, in 3 years, balance the budget, and we will start by everyone investing in refilling this cookie jar. Mr. Speaker, the words of Henry Ford are becoming my standard chorus. Coming together is a beginning. Staying together, that's progress. But working together, members of Parliament, is success. Mr. Speaker, we must balance the budget together. The member for Killarney, a man born and bred in Baintown, and the member for East Grand Bahama, a hard-working Long Island descendant who has climbed the ladder in Grand Bahama rung by rung, cannot do it on their own. Mr. Speaker, the nation must hold up their hands as they work. We must face the music together. Mr. Speaker, the government has clearly enunciated a 3-year goal and plan, as were others. We are not being presumptuous. We know that we were hired on a 5-year contract. That's all they gave us. Mr. Speaker, 5 years will go by very quickly. We are well aware. Mr. Speaker, that is a lot of pressure in a short space of time. But recognizing that the contract expires on the 9th of May 2022, we have earnestly set a target to present to the Bahamian people a balanced budget. This goal setting, Mr. Speaker, is ambitious and unprecedented in these parts, but it is not a novel idea. Many states are constitutionally mandated to produce balanced budgets. They cannot spend what they do not have. Balanced budget simply means that the total revenue is greater than the total expenses. When debt is higher than what you can afford to pay, then a void is created, and that void or difference is the deficit. Mr. Speaker, that is the necessary void we are trying to fill. Mr. Speaker, there are a number of countries who have accomplished balanced budgets and even surplus budgets. Most notable is the story of Denmark. Mr. Speaker, in 2009, Denmark's economy ran on a deficit and showed signs of shutting down. But the country embarked on a plan to work hard and fast in order to repair the situation, which included robust financial security. And by investing in advancements in technology, pharmaceuticals, agriculture, and foreign trade, they built their country they rebuilt their country on a solid foundation. Today, Denmark operates on a surplus, and this country, which collectively made a policy decision, is still reaping the rewards as a result of making that good decision. Mr. Speaker, this train is headed in the right direction. We are on a course of financial stability and sustainability, restoration of creditor and investor confidence, revival of the economy, and social vitality. Mr. Speaker, there are two words often repeated during these kinds of debate. One is budget, and the other is balance. I wish to take a moment to explain the definition and effects of these terms. Mr. Speaker, in this context, a budget is an estimate of income and expenses or money for a specific period. It is a financial plan for the proper management of actual funds. Today, in an open and transparent manner, the government shares what it is, what it has, what it intends to gain, and what it will do with the monies entrusted in its care. Mr. Speaker, the second word is balance. And whenever one thinks of balance, we think of scales and weight. Balance is an even distribution of weight, enabling someone or something to remain upright and steady. Mr. Speaker, all we are attempting to do over the next 3 years is return our industries and our economy to an upright and steady footing. Mr. Speaker, we met a sinking ship that set sail without life rafts, and save and except for 3 men and 1 strong woman, all others fell overboard. Mr. Speaker, one is. Mr. Speaker, this government has set sail on a course for transformation, and we will realize the socio-economic empowerment of our people as a result of tightening our belts. Mr. Speaker, social services. The welfare arm of the state provides social assistance to the indigent, the impotent, the disabled, the poor, the disadvantaged, the marginalized. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to serve them. Contrary to propaganda and pure rhetoric, we have been and will continue to provide for those in need during the 2018-2019 fiscal period and beyond. Notwithstanding the policy on the implementation of fiscal measures, I am pleased that the budget of the Ministry of Social Services has increased as follows: from $11,050,000 in 2017-2018 to $11,593,741 under the 2018-2019 budget. And in the Department of Social Services, whereas we had $36,694,812 in 2017-2018, we now have $39,757,411, an overall increase of $3,606,340. Mr. Speaker, it's the people's time to balance the budget, but this government is still looking out for the people. Mr. Speaker, our social safety net remains intact, And with the introduction of our data management system to track the progress of all applications and account for all clients, we will better be able to ensure that those with the greatest need receive the greatest assistance. Mr. Speaker, social services is not designed for those who want more, but those who virtually have none. The system operates to assist persons for a specific period so that after the expiration of that period, they have made some changes to come off social services. To clarify any misunderstandings, Mr. Speaker, the aim and philosophy behind social assistance is to assist individuals and families as asked and proven necessary. To ensure we fulfill the government's mandate, a socioeconomic analysis is required with respect to every single application, emergency or otherwise, because we are required to use the monies for the category of persons, that is, those in need. Nothing can be done without the SEA report. We are not able to fill a void only due to poor management, bad habits, or unhealthy practices, but we are here to provide for those in need with the opportunity, to provide them with the opportunity to recalibrate their finances or management of the same so they can come off social assistance. Mr. Speaker, social assistance is not and will not be provided for those who clearly demonstrate and are determined that they simply do not want to work. As many as can. We need everyone on board because it is the people's time to balance the budget. And we all must help to refill this cookie jar. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas has a comprehensive system of social safety net in which assistance is provided, or through which I dare say that we must and will do more with what we have. But under the existing regime, assistance programs and products are offered and opportunities for multiple empowerment opportunities exist. I encourage citizens to take every opportunity to better themselves through educational certification, job skill enhancement, and volunteer work as an avenue to build a good reputation. Mr. Speaker, our social safety net is steady and secure, but we have made a commitment to the Ministry of Finance that all things remaining equal, we commit to a balanced budget and we will exercise fiscal discipline and comply with fiscal policies established to meet that goal. To this end, Mr. Speaker, I have instructed that the team that based on recurrent expenditure figures, we must provide estimate allocations for all family islands because every social service office on every island will likewise be required to do their part in working within the means provided to help the ministry balance the budget. Mr. Speaker, social services exist to ensure that all who need assistance receive it in order to attain and maintain an acceptable standard of living. And we stand by our mantra, those with the greatest need should receive the greatest assistance. Social services is a subsidy, Mr. Speaker. It is not designed and neither can a government pay an individual's expenses every year, all year round. Hence, most of the assistances are either short-term or one-time assistance to help individuals and families back on their feet again. It is not a social security model. There is no direct investment from which one can expect or demand returns. It is a government subvention. Mr. Speaker, to that end, the only persons extended or are more likely to be approved for a lengthy period of assistance are senior citizens, dependent children, such as those who've been abandoned, abused, or neglected, the impotent, the disabled, or mentally unstable. Mr. Speaker, in order for the program to run effectively, John Doe, whose economic position has or should have changed after, let's say, 3 months of being on government subvention, has to come off the assistance so Mary Lou, who's now going through hard times, can receive the assistance benefits. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas has multiple social safety net programs in addition to those provided through the National Insurance Board. Social safety nets programs are government programs created for the primary purpose of aiding low-income individuals and families. Social services, through its social support offices and social workers, deliver these services to persons in need, which for the most part include low-income families, but may at times serve in support to support individuals who find themselves in a tough spot and require urgent assistance to meet basic or essential needs for themselves and or their family. Mr. Speaker, technical aspect of social services and that arm that directly oversees our social safety net system is the Department of Social Services. Social services operates on a virtually decentralized model. Assistance products and services are accessed through support centers situated on each island with multiple offices in New Providence to accommodate the 75% of population that live here in the capital. Mr. Speaker, today I am holding, I must get it for you, the cover of the Accessing Social Services Client Guide. Mr. Speaker, we have been working on this year-long. This is a guide to potential clients of social service and current clients that provide information with respect to social safety net programs available through the Department of Social Services. Mr. Speaker, though the government generously provides a host of programs for persons in need, I must caution that criteria, you can access this, but there is a criteria set, and there are requirements that must be met. This guide, Mr. Speaker, will be published and available in the weeks ahead and certainly before year's end. The social safety net programs which exist under the Mossad or Ministry of Social Services and Urban Development are discussed throughout this communication. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to report that the government, and in particular the Minister of Finance, has heard the cry of this minister and by extension the Bahamian people, and has maintained subsistence support to manage the social safety net programs in the amount of $2,330,000, and has added an additional $1 million for new or specific programs. Mr. Speaker, equally significant is the food assistance program, which has maintained its allocation of $12,819,150. So then, Mr. Speaker, the fact is, Mr. Speaker, this government is not cutting back on helping people. That's the fact. I gave you the numbers. The government has not made any commitment to cut back on helping people. As a matter of fact, it has made provisions for any hardship experienced as a result of the slight 4.5% increase in VAT. Policy decisions, Mr. Speaker, not political positions. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Social Services is the management or head, while the Department of Social Services and its ancillary organs functions as the hand and feet. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Social Services has no direct hand in the determination of applications or their processing, and so no, Minister Rolle does not call and say, take Tom off or put Sally on. Mr. Speaker, no, sir. On a daily basis, that process is far from me, but we are instituting a process and hotline for complaints, and a group of individuals will be designated to receive your calls and concerns. And as a start, we have launched the Client Feedback Kiosk, which is being installed in every center under the Ministry of Social Services, including all urban community centers. We encourage the public's prompt and honest feedback to help us to assist you. Mr. Speaker, we expect that all centers will be outfitted with the kiosk by year end, but the process of installation, I must report, has begun. Mr. Speaker, many may not realize, but under the Child Protection Act sections 30 and 31, social services is virtually mandated to act as the first responder for complaints against children. But if we do not know, it prohibits our ability to intervene and to respond in a timely manner. The Child Abuse Hotline, 3222763, 322-763, or 422-2763, or 422-2763. And we encourage persons to call the hotline so that emergency action can be taken and anti-abuse protocols can be initiated. Our current records reflect, Mr. Speaker, that 58% of referrals through the hotline are directly related to children. Mr. Speaker, here is cause for pause and concern. Mr. Speaker, we intend to do more with what we have to protect the rights, the interests, safety, and security of our children, and to ensure that offenders are promptly brought before the courts. Mr. Speaker, at minimum, additional professional help inclusive of more social workers, and that is trained individuals with a bachelor's degree at minimum in social work, psychology, or related field, and 2 trained attorneys working full-time in the ministry would assist towards this end. Mr. Speaker, indeed, the ministry is planned to advocate for a minors advocate office and family court that can give the needed attention to child and domestic violence abuse cases would be a move in the right direction. Mr. Speaker, the Children and Family Services Division houses the Child Protection Unit and the Domestic Violence Unit. Under the Domestic Violence Act and the Child Protection Act, the Minister of Social Services is responsible for intervening and investigating in all matters affecting that category of individuals. Reported cases of child abuse from January of this year alone amount to 121 cases. Reports of domestic violence from June 2017 to May 2018, 237 cases. Mr. Speaker, attention must be brought in this area. Mr. Speaker, we must continue to educate society with regards to the rights of children and advocate for the expeditious and just prosecution of offenders. The Department of Rehabilitative Welfare Services is governed by the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act and the amendment of 2015. This department, Mr. Speaker, oversees the National Rehabilitation Program, which includes the functions of reintegrating of ex-offenders and juvenile offenders, and also provides voluntary family planning seminars as a preventative measure. During the period July 2017 to May 2018, the department held 625 seminars and counseling sessions to aid anger management, family planning and counseling, including grief counseling, and other intervention programs that effectively aid individual and emotional support. Health Social Services is a unit, Mr. Speaker, within social services that processes persons who require health and medical care assistance. Within the fiscal period, we have spent $204,389.83 to support medical procedures and aid from July to March 2017. Hence, Mr. Speaker, this caring government's announcement of its partial rollout of the National Health Insurance Scheme with a primary focus on catastrophic care again reflects a government willing to make policy decisions rather than take political positions. I said last year, and I still say it again, this is a government that cares. Mr. Speaker, I am now convinced more than ever that what we lack in the past 5 years was the level of leadership that will make the tough decisions that work for the good of country. The good of country, Mr. Speaker. I turn to the Community Affairs Division, which facilitates community support services through social services, family support centers in the communities. Currently, there are 4 centers which are operational, 3 of which are in New Providence and the remaining in Grand Bahama. On average, these centers provide a space for wholesome and productive activities for adults, seniors, and for children, some of whom do not fit in the mold of urban community centers. I believe we will have to look at a center being specifically dedicated for disabled adults to provide for activities for adult children with disability challenges who have completed school and simply require special care and accommodations to express their talents, their creativity, and abilities. The majority of clients of the community centers are adolescent youth. Mr. Speaker, the Department of Gender and Family Affairs promotes and provides for empowerment mechanisms of the marginalized, which in many instances have proven to be women and girls. Reports for the year under review indicate that of the cases of violence, the majority are violence against women and girls. Mr. Speaker, I believe that educational campaigns and awareness seminars will better equip our society to address this vexing problem. To ensure we remain up to date with best international practices, Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to report our participation in and submission of our annual report to the United Nations during its 62nd session on the Commission of the Status of Women and the meeting of the Belém do Pará Convention of the Caribbean and Latin Americas, both of which are designed to recommend and implement protocols aimed to achieve the elimination and eradication of all forms of violence. I am also pleased, Mr. Speaker, to have participated in this year's Women's Forum of CHOGM, discussions which has resolved to leave no woman behind. We intend to establish a board for men and boys, similar to the National Council for Women, or National Women's Advisory Council, and the launching of a number of activities to raise awareness to challenges of this category, such as gang violence. We also intend to present a paper for consideration of gender officers at ministries, departments, and major organizations to ensure the fundamental principles of fairness and equal opportunity exist throughout the length and breadth of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, this is a government that cares and a government that shares, that makes policy decisions rather than take political positions, that continues to account to the people of the Bahamas and has determined to involve them in the process of balancing the budget, because it is and it remains the people's time under a free national movement administration. Mr. Speaker, the Disabilities Commission is empowered by the Persons with Disabilities Equal Opportunities Act 2014. This board monitors the policy framework on behalf of the country's disability community, and on behalf of the ministry ensures compliance with laws governing this area. We have registered a clientele of 200 who are actively involved in assisting the Commission in its responsibilities. And the Disability Affairs Division operates from the Department of Social Services to provide daily assistance programs and services to the disabled. We have a register of 194 disability assistance clients. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased that the government has allocated $380,000 to assist the disabled and those with special needs in this budget. Mr. Speaker, yes, we will balance the budget, but this government knows that the people, and the resources are limited. If we are going up, Mr. Speaker, we must all go up together. If we are going to grow, we will all grow together. We will not leave the disabled or disability community behind. Mr. Speaker, we are taking policy decisions, not political positions. Mr. Speaker, if it is time for the people to balance the budget, Social Services too realizes and is committed to doing its part to prevent cost overruns, excessive spending, and the implementation of reasonable austerity measures. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to hear of the government's further consideration of low-income families in its pronouncement to either zero rate or exempt VAT from bread basket items, and its commitment to reviewing the list to ensure Bahamians can live healthier lives. Mr. Speaker, Social Services is further delighted to hear that the government proposes, and to know that the government proposes to remove VAT from electricity bills under $100 and from water bills under $50. This positive action, Mr. Speaker, will affect a combined total of more than 60,000 consumers. Mr. Speaker, we must count our blessings and name them one by one. Customers who may be identified on social services spectrum of need. Again, this is a government that not only demands a commitment from its people, but that also makes a commitment to empower its people. Mr. Speaker, the former administration, let's get this fact right here clear, did not take VAT off anything. I'll say it again. The former administration who implemented VAT on the 1st of January 2015 did not take VAT off anything. The only thing they did not put VAT on is the air we breathe. Mr. Speaker, they didn't help anyone. They said they were putting the people first. But I ask them today still, which people? Which people? Mr. Speaker, if one who knows they are guilty, and you plead guilty, you don't waste the court's time. The court is normally minded to order a lesser sentence. But Mr. Speaker, one must admit they're wrong. Mr. Speaker, the opposition should at no time stand up and hear about a mere 4.5% and along with that concessions, exemptions, and zero rating. When they implemented 7.5% on everything, on every single thing, on insurance, education, on medicine, my God. I don't know. I'd have even put it on the dead. They wanted it on everything. And still the million-dollar question. It's a billion-dollar question because you know it's interest now. That money has been gone a little while now. You're right about it. West Grand Bahama, where the VAT money gone? Mr. Speaker, this government has made policy decisions rather than political positions. It is for the good of the Bahamian people. One asks, what people? Well, we are all one. I hear the opposition asking, what people? Whose people time? We are all one, Mr. Speaker, the last I checked, and therefore this budget is for the good of the people in Bain and Grantstown, am I correct? It's good for the people in Angleton, though missing in action, MIA. It is good for the average or above average in Seabreeze. It is good for the middle class in Blair and Winton. It is good for the rich on the Eastern Road, in St. Anne's, in Kalani. It is good for the wealthy in Lightfoot Key. It is good for our family islands. It is good for the revival of the island of Grand Bahama and good for all Bahamians. It's the people's budget and it is good. Mr. Speaker, this is a good idea, a good initiative, a good plan to balance the budget. And when it is all said and done, everyone will benefit. Mr. Speaker, all with the best intentions for the country, everyone with the good and best intentions for the country would support this worthwhile endeavor. It's a good thing to balance the budget. It's a good thing. It's the people's time to balance their budget. Mr. Speaker, social services is steadily on the path of improving our structure, system, and service. In year one, we have satisfied our international reporting obligations, conducted an inventory of staff and the inventory of service. The data management system referred to earlier will register and track our clients, monitor the application process, and professional staff performance. This system will serve to prevent duplication of efforts, processes, programs, and assistance approvals. We've embarked upon ongoing professional and customer service training for all staff levels, and will continue our restructuring process until we have a product that is palatable to the satisfaction of the Bahamian people. Mr. Speaker, we remain under the theme, people serving people. We will be able to measure our performance through the newly introduced client comment kiosk system designed to allow our clients to provide immediate feedback of our service and to ensure our positive and timely response to their concerns. Mr. Speaker, I now present a sample of the client comment card. Mr. Speaker, we give you things you can see, touch, and feel. Mr. Speaker, it's not a promise, it's reality. That will be independently collected and monitored, that card, by our special unit specifically designed for that activity. Mr. Speaker, I again sense the need to reiterate some information about this RISE program. Just want to set the record clear, Mr. Speaker. I hope this is the final time, but I did what I did, Mr. Speaker, if necessary. I brought a copy of the letter so you can see the actual letter. But, Mr. Speaker, I rise again on this matter of RISE. Sense the need to reiterate that RISE was a project, which was not a program in actuality. It was a project, a pilot project, that could have produced a program if it were successful. Mr. Speaker, but it did not yield the intended fruits up to its date of maturity in August 2017. It was not recommended to be advanced to the level of program, as our loan facilitator, the Inter-American Development Bank, indicated that the project failed to meet agreed targets. This is the letter. This is the letter. In no way has the project's closure affected the cash transfer system under the debt card regime that existed before RISE. In no way, Mr. Speaker, and this government has given us a little extra to do even a bit more. Mr. Speaker, we have to finally clear this up. We have to finally clear it's right here, Mr. Speaker, for all to see. That's the letter from the IDB. Mr. Speaker, they failed to meet the targets, failed to achieve limited results. Once again, it seems to be, Mr. Speaker, a trend of that government. But for the actions of that government, PLP government, the RISE program or project might have gone to program. But for the actions or inactions, because there was a failure, but for the inactions, the omissions of the PLP administration, the RISE project might have gone to program level. Mr. Speaker, I hope we are clear. I hope we are finally clear. I hope we are finally clear. Mr. Speaker, I wish to commend this government for a budget that cares, and for demonstrating in action that it cares. We have maintained all financing subventions and grants committed to senior citizens and children's residential care facilities.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, I do move that the business of this House continues beyond 7 p.m. today.
Second. It's been moved and seconded that the business of this House do continue today beyond 7 p.m. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The business of this House will continue beyond 7 p.m. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Seabreeze.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the senior citizens in Old Bight Mission, whom, Cat Island, Cat Island, Rum Cay, and San Salvador, the senior citizens' home is secured. We have not touched their subvention. The Naomi Christie home is secured. We have not touched their subvention. The Mary Ingram home is secure. Mr. Speaker, I have to say this because all sort of innuendos and propaganda and rhetoric are out there saying we're stopping the subventions. I don't know why people do these things. They're still doing it. And it's unfortunate. These are political. Mr. Speaker, we're here to make policy decisions rather than take political positions. So Naomi Christie home is secured, Mary Ingram is secured, Elizabeth States Children home is secured, Bilney Lane home is secured, Nazareth Center secured, Rantley home secured.
Amen. It's a caring government.
I only can name a few in the limited time that I have.
Say all secured.
All secure.
In good hands.
This is serious because this is a caring government. I mean, in finding the cookie jar like this, you would say, you know, we don't have it. We really can't do it. But in the midst of all of that, this government still maintained to help the people.
Good leadership.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, people do not want to know how much you know you know.
No.
They are concerned with how much you care. And Mr. Speaker, from my last budget communication to now, the word of this government has remained the same. We said we care. We said we'd share. This is a government that will do what we say we will do. Mr. Speaker, this means so much to me because it shows reverence to the word of God, which says at Matthew 25, starting at verse 35, paraphrased, "Come, ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you. For I was hungered, and ye gave me meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me drink. I was a stranger, ye clothed me. I was sick, ye visited me. I was in prison, ye came unto me. Inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these, my brethren, ye have done it unto me."
Paraphrase, the cookie jar is empty now.
Mr. Speaker, in every sense of this text is the work and labor of social services invested by the government and for and on behalf of the Bahamian people. Mr. Speaker, this government realizes that the poor we will always have with us, and this government is our brother's keeper. Mr. Speaker, there is nothing like a good bunch of bananas, or apples or oranges. Nothing like a good bunch, even a good bunch of grapes. And Mr. Speaker, I dare say that the Bahamian people have picked a good bunch to serve as stewards of the people's purse. It is the people's time to balance the budget, but we will have to invest something in the cookie jar, and we have a good bunch to make sure we do that. Mr. Speaker, Social Services also works with NEMA to provide shelter management during natural disasters as per the Disaster Management Act. We have produced, Mr. Speaker, we're talking about a government that's working from day one. From day one. We have produced for the information of the public a shelter guide, which provides details of the functioning of a public shelter, expectations of the shelter management, and that of all sheltered, in addition to a listing of all shelters approved to be operated on behalf of the government throughout the islands of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, we're leaving no island behind. Every shelter is in here. They were all inspected, all in the proper condition. If they were not, tell them don't put it in the booklet. Hello? Mr. Speaker, this guide will be officially launched post these budget sessions and made available to the general public from all community support centers. Mr. Speaker, I am delighted to report that the Urban Renewal Program is being renewed every day. Every day, Mr. Speaker. We have 22 offices operational in all major islands, with 9 here on the island of New Providence. Just last week, Mr. Speaker, we launched at the Pinewood Urban Community Center, Pinewood, the renovation and rebranding of the urban centers, introducing the concept of one urban, one Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, after which I received a call. I said, Madam Minister, I felt like I was in a community center in the States. Top class. That's what you get from a free national movement government. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to this government, when I was a young lady, I was still young, but when it comes to this government, you don't have to ask where the money gone. You're going to see it, you're going to touch it, you're going to smell it, you're going to feel it, you're going to taste it, because this government does what it says it will do. Mr. Speaker, we are one, and if we are going to right this wrong of the government, we have to do it together. It is my considered opinion that but for the poor management of the former administration, we would not be in the position we are now faced with. Mr. Speaker, some of the urban managers are here today, all uniformed down. I wouldn't say fired up and ready to go, but Mr. Speaker, they are here looking smart nevertheless. Mr. Speaker, what you will find at these centers is a unified appearance, full staff to operate programs, and a more organized and 21st century system approach. Mr. Speaker, this urban renewal program information booklet. Mr. Speaker, we're working. We've been working, Mr. Speaker. These things take months to produce. In 5 years, they produce absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. I had to open it, Mr. Speaker, because I didn't want you to believe it was blank pages. Mr. Speaker, 21st century, a sample of the booklet which I now hold has been produced to inform the community of existing programs that they can participate in. I want to say this here, free of charge. Oh, yeah. Free of charge.
Karen.
This is a government that cares, that shares, and want to take us higher now to balancing our budget. Mr. Speaker, this government realizes, as the Deputy Prime Minister would have stated in this communication, social progress goes hand in hand with increase in economic freedom. And social programs are the fuel of social engines that drive healthy social environments. Mr. Speaker, now concluding, what about this VAT increase of 4.5%? Save and accept for the first year when an F&M administration turned its government over to a progressive Liberal Party administration. Save and accept for that first year in 2012, 2013. Let's be careful now. Every other year, the country suffered a downgrade.
Every year.
And almost irreparable damage to the good name and reputation of our country. Mr. Speaker, how dare we not support this goal of a balanced budget every year? Mr. Speaker, you know, when I went to court one time, the judge said the unmitigated goal of you.
Unmitigated goal.
Mr. Speaker, the good book said a good name is preferred rather than riches. Unless they repent, there is no remission of sins, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the credibility of our country was on the line. The reputation that our forefathers built was being threatened. And this minister-led administration could not in all good conscience stand by and face another downgrade or another year of increased deficit with no plan for economic growth. No plan. Only plan is to spend. And I told you, if they were here last year, thank God we got in, 4.5% would have been a joke. It would have been a joke, Mr. Speaker, because they told you. We were going straight for 15.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That was the intention.
They told you.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumkin, San Salvador.
The member, on one occasion in her contribution, suggested that during her contribution, that it was the intention of the previous administration, if they were re-elected, to increase that to 15%. When she first said it, I allowed it to go because it was said in the context that that was her belief. She now is saying that we said that. I asked her to produce. I deny it. It was never in our thought or contemplation, to which I will address later on. It was never in our thought or contemplation. And I invite her to withdraw that statement, because we never said it, and I go as far as to say that it was never in our contemplation.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Southern Shores.
The honorable member said that on the authority of someone who was there. Who said that? The honorable member from Bamboo Town was there when that was said.
Honorable members,
Speaker.
honorable members.
Mr. Speaker, as Speaker, I would hope that I won't have to correct members all the time, because you are sitting here and you're listening too, and you're hearing the members too. The member from Bamboo Town never said he heard that. What he said is that we were discussing and was our intention to do so. But during the discussion and negotiations for it, I objected to that, because, and I even pointed out that the member who was sitting right in the back of him from the Freetown was part of the negotiations and discussions. It was a recommendation to go to 15, but was never adopted or accepted by the stakeholders, and after consultation, and the government accepted LP. The fact is, it was 7.5%. And Mr. Speaker, members, sometimes if the Speaker were to correct members in their mischaracterization, of course, if the Speaker remembers. I'm not saying that the Speaker remembers.
Honorable member.
That's the context of our constitution.
You're going down a path now.
Ms. Barton.
Disrespectful part.
You are purporting to suggest to the Speaker how the Speaker should conduct the affairs
No, Mr. Speaker.
of the business.
What I'm saying, Mr. Speaker.
Now, honorable member, first of all, I wasn't around prior to this session of Parliament, or this term of office.
No, we just talked about up and now.
Yesterday,
Up and now.
if I recall, the exchange between yourself and the member for Bamboo Town was precisely what you indicated, that there were discussions. Initially, you indicated that the opposition never had the intention when they were government. And the member for Bamboo Town responded that he was present when the discussions took place. And basically the member for South Beach only indicated that
Mr. Speaker, sorry, she said it more than twice. I let it go the first time because the context was very glib. But she said, we said that we would do so.
I did not.
After the election. That's what you said.
I did not. I did not say that you said you would do so. I said I
they
believe that if you were elected again, that you would go to 15% as was recommended. Just as I believed, Mr. Speaker, that they were going to come out of government, and they did. I believe, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, a charter is good, but you need a well-thought-out plan of execution and a good pilot to take you to your destination. Mr. Speaker, we could not hide behind the failed or false fiscal projections of the former administration. They failed. And the facts are here, and I'll go through it. With no sense of fiscal prudence, measures of austerity, or apparent concern for fiscal responsibility, each year the former administration increased the deficit. Mr. Speaker, these are the facts. By 10%, 2013-2014 budget. By 33% in 2014-2015. by 120%, 2015, 2016, by 561%, Mr. Speaker, in the year they saw the handwriting on the wall. I get offended. I'm not trying to offend anyone. I'm just trying to get the truth out here. Mr. Speaker, I'll say it one more time. I'm heading down, but I'm just say it one more time. Every year the deficit increased under the last administration.
The chair recognizes the honourable member on a point of order.
Again, that is not fact. Can we produce the central bank report?
Save and except for year one.
That's going to be left money. That's going to be left money.
No, I have it here. No, I have it here. I invite her to check.
Call the deficit.
To check the. Yeah. The Bahamas evolution of the deficit. Just look in the. No, I could. Yeah, well. No, I could bring it. I'll bring it. I'll bring it, Mr. Speaker. I'll bring it.
Go.
Didn't go ahead. 557.
You know, Mr. Speaker, try not to offend. You know, it was really a hard blow. I'm trying not to offend, Mr. Speaker. I'll move on, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure the member has good time to be able to respond as they wish to do, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the facts are clear. Mr. Speaker, the evidence is clear. 10% political capital. 3 and one woman, Mr. Speaker. I'm not going to go there with them. They're already in a serious, sad place. Mr. Speaker, they knew the people had lost confidence in the PLP, and with no regard to my mind, and everything I say is from my mind and my opinion. I hope I can have it in here. No regard. We had 4 downgrades. This is the state in which they left the government of the Bahamas, Mr. Speaker. I say an empty cookie jar. The Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance says a bare cupboard. That's our take, our perception. That's what I believe. Empty. Mr. Speaker, if we follow the PLP administration's model, even with VAT at 7.5%, we would have gotten the same PLP results. That's what I believe. It was simply not wise to do the same thing. Their formula was a remedy for disaster. Mr. Speaker, we are praying and hoping the Bahamian people never experience that standard of government ever again. Mr. Speaker, this budget goes beyond the next 4 years, you know. It is a budget designed to plant seeds to secure for our nation a better today, a brighter tomorrow, and a financially safe and economically sound future. Mr. Speaker, that's the youth coming in today. That's who we're doing this for. We're doing it for them, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and financially safe and economically sound future. And to this, Mr. Speaker, this Free National Movement administration has, with great pain, submitted its popular political position to fulfill its mandate and duty to make a responsible and sound policy decision. Mr. Speaker, we were at rock bottom. And to begin to turn the economic tide, we had to go up. Up was the only way to ensure that in 5 short years we rise above the financial hole in which we found ourselves in. Mr. Speaker, it's the people's time to balance the budget. Mr. Speaker, social services could not effectively function without the support of the government-appointed boards and non-governmental organization partners. They assist in making critical observations, key interventions, and provide the volunteer support necessary to help us serve our clients. And to these philanthropists, the country is forever grateful. Mr. Speaker, a key goal of the ministry during the next fiscal period is to present for the government's consideration a social services bill and a bill for an act to provide for the establishment of an urban development authority. Mr. Speaker, urban development through urban renewal programs have become intricately tied to our regional and international goals of sustainable development. So much so that a leader has referred to it as an industry. And because of its very nature, I have ventured to describe it as the people's industry. Mr. Speaker, urban programs are specifically targets spaces where the majority of a population live and function, and it is intended to ensure that all citizens have fair opportunities to live meaningful and productive lives. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Social Services and Urban Development will look at using what we have to invest in the hiring of more professional staff, training of staff, and the implementation of programs that educate and raise awareness of the needs existing among the most vulnerable in our society. Mr. Speaker, I believe the answer to good management of our social ills is a healthy and growing economy. Therefore, Seabreeze recommends the government maintains its commitment to achieving a balanced budget. Stay focused on implementing ways to grow the economy, monitor and properly manage the rate of inflation, reduce expenditure through the application of fiscal discipline and best budgeting practices and accounting rules. Mr. Speaker, the much-needed Social Services Act will consider the need for the family court, for child advocates, and also regulations to govern protocols with respect to compliance with the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act, and particularly, Mr. Speaker, addressing spent offenses to ensure the ex-offenders receive a second chance and fair opportunity to live meaningful lives and perhaps even to travel abroad, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I firmly believe that a sexual offenders registry is crucial to deterring, detecting, preventing, and prosecuting cases of child abuse and domestic violence. Mr. Speaker, we must save the children and ensure there are effective and functional safeguards for the protection of life and development of the family. Strengthening the presence of social workers and the police in the urban centers, it will be much easier to successfully execute the regulations and mandated protocols. Mr. Speaker, I must state here that the Ministry of National Security, in particular, the officers of the Royal Bahamas Police Force and the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, have been a pillar of strength for the smooth functioning of urban programs and are truly deserving of the best rewards. Mr. Speaker, I have saved the best for last. Seabreeze has helped to cool the heat that comes with this territory. I wish to take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to thank the people of Seabreeze for reposing confidence in this Member of Parliament to do all I can to build a better Seabreeze. The Seabreeze report, Mr. Speaker, it's not talk, it's action. Mr. Speaker, it's the Seabreeze report. It's been published under the theme, Moving Forward Together. That's what it's all about, Mr. Speaker. If we're going to balance the budget, if we're going to build our economy, if we're going to strengthen our people, we can only do it together. This is a report of our performance from the day I was elected. And I say, Mr. Speaker, we have a big one and then we have a small one. Mr. Speaker, we want to do what we're supposed to do for the people. And I dare say, Mr. Speaker, because I did not and cannot do it alone, it was with the help and hands and support of the good people and friends of Seabreeze. Mr. Speaker, notable in the report is a record of our monthly newsletter, published and distributed electronically and by hard copy for the benefit of all residents monthly. Noteworthy is the partnership initiatives with the Ministry of Environment, specifically Roads and Parks, and the Solid Waste Management Division, both of which have been most responsive to the concerns of the community. I do thank the Minister of Works and the Minister of Environment. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to report that the instructions of the Prime Minister, good member for Kalani, all town meetings have been held to keep the constituency informed of activities and to hear their concerns. The date, the time, and the place, all are here. It's all in here. Mr. Speaker, never mind the pessimists and naysayers. This is a caring and transparent government. That's the fact. Putting words into action. Mr. Speaker, we know we are not perfect. So wherever and however we have not gotten it right, we take every day to improve our performance. I thank the Almighty God, my family, associates, fellow members of the clergy, my learned colleagues at the bar, and social acquaintances, the Free National Movement Council, the F&M Seabreeze Association, and the Seabreeze constituency team, which all in one way or another continues to pray and support my family and I as we render service to country. I thank the Honorable Prime Minister and all members of the government for offering the necessary encouragement needed to carry the load of serving country. To the management and staff of social services who carry the weight of social ills on your shoulder daily, to you I say thank you for your cooperation in receiving this minister. Mr. Speaker, it was only in 2015, while I stood for the first time to deliver my budget communication in that other place. As a then political novice, I expressed the need for the country to produce a balanced budget. At that time, that other place, Mr. Speaker, I was opposition senator. And under that administration, I knew the country did not have a snowball chance in hell to produce a balanced budget. But I was hopeful to see the return of a government in the sunshine. Today, Mr. Speaker, I am a witness that dreams come true. Consequently, and to my good fortune and that of the Bahamian people, Mr. Speaker, I have been given the opportunity to serve the people with a leadership team that has vision and is willing to make policy decisions over political positions. A leadership team that in 1 year's time was not afraid to present the people's budget and give the people an opportunity to obtain financial leverage, or the financial leverage it needs to grow the economy and return our country to sound financial footing. Mr. Speaker, it is the people's time to balance the budget, and Seabreeze supports the decision of this government to ask everyone to begin to refill this cookie jar. Mr. Speaker, we have experienced a great start, and I'm looking forward to a better year ahead under the steady hands of the physician, our Prime Minister and member for Killarney, and the stable financial head of the accountant, the member for East Grand Bahama, our Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Steady as she goes. Seabreeze supports the people's budget, 2018 and 2019. God bless Seabreeze. God bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.